the first to know. Nsem-Pii TV.
The VOA News, Voice of Africa News, an interesting podcast. In fact, Ababitoja, very, very interesting. Nina say, according to the Voice of Africa, for 30 years, Enie Adi Sonkobi SC Ewo America. Nina say, according to the Voice of Africa, since 1994, and a US penning for an institute to Adebi Omofreno, African leaders for high-level commercial talks. Now, in terms of trade, Africa remains one of US biggest trade partners. You have to say a Nsem exists between the United States of America and the African continent cannot be overlooked. The numerous raw materials and resources, the African continent, furnishing US, produce so many products, In fact, it is worth noting. And since 1995, US penny for organize high-level commercial talks for African leaders to strengthen the trade ties between the United States and leaders from the African continent. Now, since 1995, Ghana has actively been represented in these high-level commercial talks between the United States and African leaders. And in 1995, His Excellency Flight Lieutenant Jerry John Rawlings, in fact, MET, President Bill Clinton, and other African leaders at the White House. Now, in 2008, specifically the 15th of September 2008, then President Kufuor, His Excellency, also MET, President George Walker Bush, at the White House, during the same high-level commercial talks for African leaders, and Ghana was again represented in 2008. In 2012, the late Professor J.E.A. Mills, His Excellency, may he so rest in peace, and so represented Ghana with respect to African leaders' high-level commercial talks with U.S. President Barack Hussein Obama. Now, on the 15th of December 2021, Jumadiani Koso, a bra, His Excellency Nana Danko Akufo-Addo, together with other African leaders, and so it was to President Joe Biden at the White House to discuss trade talks. Interestingly, this high-level commercial talks that involves trade agreement between the African continent and the United States, slated for this month, African leaders are President Donald Trump. Interestingly, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama Nkamu, the dean, he's been snubbed. Until kind Voice of Africa, or more podcast, I say, U.S. President Donald Trump will host a delegation of African leaders from 5 Western Central African nations for commercial discussion in Washington next week, according to a White House official report. The talks, scheduled for July 9th, will include a luncheon and working sessions focused on trade and investment opportunities between the United States and the African continent. The leaders invited to attend from the African continent are from Gabon, Guinea-Bissau, Liberia, Mauritania, and Senegal. And for the first time in over 30 years, Ghana is missing from the list of African leaders that are supposed to host the United States President in terms of trade and investment opportunity stock. Flight Lieutenant Jerry John Rawlings, Enya Kosa meeting ibi. His Excellency John Ajekun Kufuor Nya Kosa meeting ibi. His Excellency the late Professor J.E.A. Mills Nya Kosa Nshamu ibi. His Excellency Nana Danko Akufo-Addo Nya Kosa Nshamu ibi. But in the case of His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, interestingly, from the White House, President Donald Trump opted for Gabon, Guinea-Bissau, Liberia, Mauritania, and the Senegal. The summit, which will run through July 11th, is being framed by Trump's team as a continuation of his administration's efforts to pursue a more commercially driven relationship with Africa, emphasizing business deals over traditional aid models. During his presidency and his post-presidency policy agreement, Trump has promoted what he calls an America-first approach to international relations, including a more selective stance on foreign aid. His administration significantly cut foreign aid programs across Africa, arguing that aid should be better aligned with U.S. economic and security interests. Instead, Trump has pushed for partnerships based on trade, private investment, and reciprocal economic benefits, a stance he continues to advocate. According to reports from Africa Intelligence, this upcoming summit is a part of a broader effort by Trump to reassert influence in Africa through private sector-led cooperation rather than traditional diplomatic or development-focused frameworks. The summit is expected to cover a wide range of commercial and economic topics, including 1, infrastructure development, 2, energy cooperation, 3, agricultural investment, 4, public-private partnerships, 5, regional trade facilitations. And some questions are being asked. Say, yeah, for the first time in over 30 years, Ghana and its president, are missing from a White House meeting that is going to buttress on strengthening of trade and other policy agreements between the United States and the African continent. ABC, and I'm saying His Excellency John Dramani Mahama betra kunya so then what about Russia and other Sahel countries, the US and womuni chakano and unti and Abia ama President Trump asnobo Ghana for the first time in such a crucial meeting. Ebinso adwenya won say the foreign affairs minister, the honorable Kujetwa Blakwa, and Nsem-Pii entwa yene nkoyi na oye ewo Washington abonten so no eno na bia ama Trump ko apa ntia ose pan no twa no ohia Ghana kra ewo sa meeting yase ebenso kiremu a e ka twetwiri dia energy sector power plant agreement the S1 Mahama administration sensan ye den no bo ka go hona wantua na US aban kiremu a by force, by hook or crook, Ghana metuasa kani nyina ya even almost Senate. Senators did be raising these issues. Say, the entrench of money was IMF de breya krano. US in Tiscana directive from Frimono. Sa canon and other matters in tea. NNA, President Donald Trump, for the first time in over 30 years. In fact, I ignore Ghana in such a crucial meeting. But the reasons may be far and fetched. But from the voice of Africa, the news is that for the first time in over 30 years, Ghana has been snubbed as US President Donald Trump hosts African leaders for high-level commercial talks. He said the Abeya, Beunu said, Sabin, Koma Edino Hano, and your Busim Kanyatro. Yes, your boy Timu Kassem, the woman idea woman in Tino. Me were an audio. Ya mebo ede achiramo from Yenianimo Voice of Africa on this same issue. Amwo say no kranim ni nyame anim ni Ghana has been snubbed. Ye wi ankomo aka wo ho no na me dia so so jam.
U.S. President Donald Trump will host leaders from 5 African nations in Washington next week to discuss commercial opportunities with them. Trump will be meeting the leaders of Gabon, Guinea-Bissau, Liberia, Mauritania and Senegal at the White House. Now, the Trump administration says it wants to focus on trade and investment and to drive mutual prosperity. The administration has, of course, axed swaths of U.S. foreign aid for Africa as part of a plan to curb spending, which it considers wasteful and not aligned with Trump's America First policies. The U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said the U.S. was abandoning what he called a charity-based foreign aid model and will instead favor nations that demonstrate both the ability and willingness to help themselves. U.S. ambassadors in Africa have already shepherded about 33 agreements worth $6 billion in Trump's first 100 days. Of course, in recent years, U.S. goods exported to sub-Saharan Africa have represented less than 2% of total U.S. trade. Well, let's now delve into all of this with Ovigwe Eguegu, a policy advisor at Development Reimagined. Great to have you with us today, sir. Now, of course, one thing we've noted is that there seems to be a change in strategy from this administration in which commercial opportunities are pretty much driving the U.S. engagement with Africa. Do you agree with that? What do you expect will be the focus at this meeting with the 5 leaders?
Yeah, thank you for having me. Well, if we look at how the U.S. is engaging with Africa under Trump, the running narrative is there's a shift from aid to trade. But if you look more deeply, you see it's really more of the US's approach trying to reorient its economy and its own global posture for the ongoing global competition with China, with Russia. Because back in 2018, there was that national defense strategy under Trump's first term, where it clearly stated that the US is going to go into that, countering Russia and China all across the world, especially in Africa. Trump's second term is very much a continuation of that. Almost very quickly he came into office, his focus has been on ensuring critical and strategic minerals, and that has driven his agenda in the DRC, Rwanda conflict, even though the more devastating conflict on the continent is in Sudan.
Right. But you talked about that recent deal with the DRC. Is this strategy beneficial for Africa, both economically and politically, given, of course, that we've also seen him axe a large part of the U.S. foreign aid to Africa?
Well, even if we're going to go by the narrative, which is the shift from aid to trade, it still has a lot of the problems that didn't make aid work, which is ignoring local context and local needs. If you look at the DRC's deal for a peace agreement, for instance, it doesn't really address the root causes of the conflict. Even if we go to the Lobito Corridor project, for instance, which is funded by the DFI, started under Trump's first term, it's still a mine to port deal. Whereas in Africa, the message is very clear. We want local beneficiation, refining of critical minerals, to ensure that local economies get the most out of these critical minerals. There is no sign that the Trump administration is committed or even interested in doing such deal, because it requires a lot of work, more bigger investment, and more long-term planning.
Yeah, and it's interesting. What particular industries, commodities, or sectors do you think this Trump administration is targeting? Which of these will be key to the discussions on the table?
Yeah, I think the priority has always been critical and strategic minerals, but for these particular countries, not all of them. I mean, a lot of them don't even have significant deposits of these critical minerals. Guinea-Bissau, not so much. Senegal has some oil and gas, which is already exploiting. Mauritania fisheries, and some natural resources, minerals as well. So it's not particularly clear how the emphasis on critical and strategic minerals really fit into to the selection of the countries that will be having this summit. But then again, there's also the issue of security.
Kakana se yame mani mfia duenu kwa atutu na chiye. Ofa na mu osra no apapa ne pipa bi no de ase ase de okwa asemka.
Ba ndisi fo anyade.
Wo ma anyade. Mini ahwe. Wonim sa nkrofo no a. Wonim nkrofo no yie pa no a. Ya na esere. Na ko parliament ya de ntra parliament o mu de doso na so mu sha no eyemienu. Ne edi kan pa ne se. Minia ye na mienu ne sma fidie na mienu na ahwe. Na mum ye sma fidie na yinam na so ma me ko hwebidi a parliament me ma. Enti majority of them omo nya adwuma no they are always absent. That is one. They are tossing me in the so bo ni brofo. Mr. Pika abayu kama say pa kame kra me best sponsor no you say Miss Ghana. Mr. Pika Sunyani West. Ame ya cheme mfiri wanum na me Mr. Pika. Yesterday I am another day. And kra me show my your kings right from JHS, primary JHS SS. They would never Mr. Pika bayo kama say they say yes you are kenesu. One chen will sit and also no osie. What you say? And now we see an anka me friend bi zanze ura na mpomwe. Ba se ro hu si sebre na ro nam so ba ja me twam na. What you say? We ni are se chire o mai. Na what you say? Ba ku bi so to hwe eminia ba mane nka bi. Ba de ye kan nyina no e preparedness. So what you say? Ye hian kabomu. Nti emu bi afatu ye ho so. Me ye ba omiane me ba omiechina ebreso no nyame de no ba na mfie nwotwe no wie a eno de ye duru nsuo no abehunu ni twa ba
lawyer ho no de hia me pa what de ma ekufimbre ni enka on unity no because since say ye conference the 19th na ye hwe other matters I don't so ho no hia me pa why anaka we there be tinase
na ma monitor na mifria na community
adam
mifria be sama kwa another station
but eti dey mention unity no na yeah together with the conference
MPP achade pa no a ye dey ma NDC for ene ye ntokwa kon na nsan samna sha babiafie no a mo ye minority no ene a na ho no mo a hwe konya nko mo fa so akofa 1 cedi ato 1 liter so because ye didi o opposition usube nyina te se be ma woni sika konya ma bepe wo no wa ho brase wa fade wa defe na be ma wo woni sika na so sori a wo tietia ma so a wanhwe ya nto pada ye wo opposition enti unity no Ghana for not even a day passes ye ne atie nya busa every blessed day wo hia obi no aka kire say mon kama no ntum mantuaba nenso meto ne penisa already no ye were 2 million plus aminia all mantuaba ni bie se 2 million no kra nto kra no ba o 9% a se 2 million 1 million kra no meto aba minia se tie bia no NDC wipusade ma na tie din bia ba se edu nkatia ya ono de be onam enam eni sunsun mu niam a oye Mateo kon ne enso etuo Mateo kon what is hamen no ye di wesi aba ema ampa ho amamu no mubuo yi ball leader ho no mbɔhye akufu ado abobra ba omia bobra mo ba ye STEM education ho mo ba ye TVET ho no mo ba ye schools ahodo a ye sisie akonya ahodo a ye yie empa Shanty region ha NDC for be campaign no what you say ese ya anyahwe no akonya kufu ado ayi ha ebi si ba bi ada but of course strategically no na enye se ye trasia ma eye swami interchange prior to the election any be ye MDC for take advantage enti papa ni aye ni nyina no so katai se enye hwe wasantememu wo mo anu wo mo kogigi uta mo ni ase ye ne be ye ne ade no ya mo papa no Kufuor didn't mean any evil for the Ashantis. Or ya juma papa. But Swamediano Ankasa, one of the campaign it. And nano baby akodronye. Yampe we. Ne yampeba of your bedding. But Nina Mono, any pass to suit on Yamina Shishe. Ebia and Yameseba of Yamma, ye bedet messing Hokwine. Ebia no say, Ebia do to Nemra. Ebia was a bright champon, and a Iraq Japan. And I say, you're Patrick Buama, and Emra. ni nyina ne say me ton me ba omia no ton wo you the same Canada Japan anopa bia na say almost every now and then ma frɛ kwasi kwaten kwasi yan hwɛ ye kan wanya ne de o ba omia nya ne de so tiase Patrick Yaboama watra parliament almost 16 years anya hwe kura no kapre bi da ho panifu nyina no in one word another no wo manya bibi ba ye na ye di akire ye ne amobo enti sempanifu kan ene ba omia kohia yi ase no mo atu abom ne esere na ye sori na menema no odinti na owusu bempatia na bronyetia na domakuba fitia ye nyansa pa no anything. Enti some of us have resolved say saade no ye kantam ye so ni pani adue ena no ye hie ya ye bia school wo tinsam a ye ruakofo obie na no kan yi so ti ase ye ruakofo so tinsam kan ye masterpiece of a yipa eninti no sabi baby ye be duro no Ghana fo hia yen eniema a ekoso no menua afi nko na wie ye no ubon sa ndc fo mo ntade krombe hye no because ya mo mo kun ache se wo mu wie we say ya na wo mu nko oman no 64 years independence wo manya 31 years ananya sa netie 31 years wasted years mo ba nipa mu enedwo ma America tribalism nipa mu we number 1 ne mo bia no obo mpaye no anadwi wadama nyame yi ne ho akire no timi mpese meka no bebre ne mom de di animu no ene ye be sese mpaebo no ebia eye mere artificiality eye mere confession dia efri na akure no ye hwede ekoso but eno krampo se na no IMF sika 360 million dollars ko mu ko wia o se ko mu ko wia so ti ase but I commend our members of parliament titiri wo mo economic front no o kwa Nkrumah o hwe Gideon Uche walwale MP no so ti ase na uche mpanifo mo economic oh they are doing very fantastic no dan chan na ukohwe ye niakuma ye de otafi or the saying
Vincent
ene de obosuntwin obosome bosome frem
okay asafo eje
yes any titru no obedi na party yes
but for
they are doing wonderfully well and now nipa no shawo but they prepare themselves amamuo no nyatenka o say me sorry ya medibi da bi ya dia o so tobo usane mepo u steady mpanimfo odi ahobrase odi nyamesuro enne de na ba omieka yesi wo ye ayi wawura Christopher dem wawura nkramodem no enura mama ne mpa ya obo ya onu abegyina obie na no ka kire say adentina ba omieka o munyina ho no enura de o say National Day of Prayer yinya bosomfo megunsa yinya nkramofo na se ya kyerkyere ma kyerɛ mɔmfo a mene wasɛm bi ka ne Ghana fo hia ye ne ano konfo peso no otra no o kyerɛ no chiwade eni to amo say ye hia sumdwe ye hia nkabomu ye nkamom enoso ena menam yi adum ni ade na bia o masa mon kama no ntum na yehunu yanka
de bia ka ne yedubo
onyame nhyira tiefo
but